clock on the wall says 3:14 a.m. The world outside is dead, but in the security room of the North End Mall, the blue light of the monitors is the only thing alive. Most people think security cameras are there to prevent crime. They aren't. They are there to witness things that humans were never meant to see. I've been a night guard for 12 years. I've seen shoplifters. I've seen bored teenagers. And I've seen the occasional stray dog wandering the aisles. But what I saw on camera 14 last Tuesday, that isn't something you can explain away with logic. It started with a glitch, a simple flicker on the screen. Camera 14 covers the dead zone. A long, windowless corridor leading to the old service elevator. No one uses that elevator. It's been decommissioned since the late 90s after a technician was found crushed in the shaft at 3:15 a.m. The screen went static just for a second. When the picture returned, the corridor wasn't empty anymore. There was a girl. She looked about 7 years old, wearing a pale blue dress that looked damp, clinging to her skin. She was standing perfectly still, facing the camera. Her head was tilted at an angle that looked wrong. Too sharp, too unnatural. I leaned in, my heart drumming against my ribs. I checked the logs. No one had entered the building. All the perimeter alarms were silent. I reached for my radio to call my partner, Marcus, who was supposed to be patrolling the second floor. Marcus, do you copy? I've got a 10 to 45 on camera 14. A kid looks lost. Static. Pure white noise was all that came back. I looked back at the monitor. The girl had moved. She was now 5 feet closer to the camera. She hadn't walked. The footage didn't show any movement. It was like she was teleporting every time the frame refreshed. The most terrifying part, she wasn't looking at the camera lens. She was looking above it, like she was looking at the person watching the screen. I felt a cold draft in the tiny, sealed security room. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my own breath. I grabbed the joystick to pan the camera, trying to see if someone was behind her. As the camera tilted down, I saw her feet. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her feet were black not from dirt, but from rot. And behind her, trailing from the shadows of the service elevator, were handprints, dozens of wet small handprints on the floor, all leading toward her. Then she did something that stopped my heart. She raised a finger to her lips. The monitor cut to black. All of them. 16 screens. All dead. In the sudden darkness of the room, I heard a sound that didn't come from the speaker. It came from the air vent, right above my head. Gray hee. It was the sound of a small, heavy weight moving through the metal ducting. The silence in the security room was louder than any noise. I sat there, paralyzed, staring at 16 black monitors. The only light left was the tiny red power LED on the console, blinking like a slow heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Something was in the vents. It wasn't the scurrying of a rat. It was the sound of something dragging itself, something heavy, something wet. Every time it moved, the metal groaned under the weight. He fumbled from a heavy-duty flashlight. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it twice. When the beam finally cut through the dark, I didn't point it at the door. I pointed it at the vent. The silver slats of the vent cover were bent, pushed outward from the inside. He knew I had to leave. I had to get out of that room. But to get to the main exit, I had to pass through the north corridor, the dead zone. He grabbed my keys and sprinted out of the security booth. My footsteps echoed in the empty mall, sounding like gunshots. Every mannequin I passed felt like a person watching me, their plastic eyes following my movement. I reached the north corridor. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered. They didn't just turn on, they pulsed with a sickly yellow glow. And then, the decommissioned service elevator at the end of the hall, the one that had been dead for 20 years. Ding! The sound was crystal clear. The bell that signaled an arrival. The floor indicator above the elevator door began to move. It was in the basement. Un minuto. Then, lobby. The rusted doors groaned, metal scraping against metal, as they slowly slid open. There was no light inside the elevator, just a void of thick, oily darkness. I stood frozen, my flashlight beam shaking in the center of that dark hole. Marcus, I whispered, hoping against hope that my partner was playing a sick joke. No, answer. Instead, a smell began to drift out of the elevator. It was the smell of old stagnant water and rusted iron. And then, something rolled out of the darkness and hit my boot. It was a security radio. Marcus's radio. It was cracked. The plastic casing melted, as if it had been hit by a blowtorch. He looked up, and my light hit the back wall of the elevator. Scratched into the metal, hundreds of times, were the words, "Watch me." My breath hitched. I looked at the floor of the elevator. There was a puddle of water, and in that water, I saw a reflection, but it wasn't my reflection. In the water, I saw the girl in the blue dress. She was standing right behind me. It didn't turn around. I couldn't. I bolted. I ran toward the emergency exit, my lungs burning, my heart feeling like it was going to explode. I pushed the heavy crash bar on the exit door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. Primera turned around, trapped against the door. The corridor lights flickered and died, one by one, starting from the elevator and moving toward me. Snappy, snappy, snappy. Total darkness was chasing me. I turned my flashlight back on, but the batteries were dying. The beam was dim, orange, fading. And then I saw it. On the wall next to me was a small, modern CCTV camera. The little red light on it was glowing. It was recording. I realized then why the girl in the footage looked above the lens. She wasn't looking at the guard. She was looking at the camera's soul. I felt a cold, wet hand wrap around my ankle. The coldness around my ankle wasn't just cold. It felt like ice burning into my skin. I kicked blindly, my boot hitting something that felt soft, like wet fabric. A low, gurgling hiss echoed in the narrow hallway. I scrambled away, crawling on my hands and knees until I reached the maintenance closet near the food court. I locked the door from the inside and slumped against the wall, gasping for air. My flashlight was dead now. The only light came from the thin gap under the door. I needed to know. I needed to understand why this was happening. In the corner of the closet, I found an old filing cabinet. It was covered in thick layers of dust and cobwebs. I remembered the rumors, the stories the older guards told, but never finished. They talked about the incident of '98. I pulled open the drawer labeled 1995-2000, Archives. My fingers searched through damp folders until I found it. A police report, yellowed with age. The headline read, "Tragedy at North End. Search for missing child called off." Her name was Lily. She was 7 years old. According to the report, Lily had been playing hide-and-seek with her friends while her mother was shopping. She had crawled into the service elevator shaft, thinking it was the ultimate hiding spot. But the elevator wasn't decommissioned back then. It was active. The report described the mechanical failure that led to the elevator descending while the girl was still in the pit. But there was a detail the newspapers didn't print. A handwritten note from the lead detective was clipped to the back. It read, "The CCTV footage from that night is unexplainable. The girl didn't look scared. In the final frames before the impact, she looked directly into the camera and smiled. It was as if she knew. It was as if she wanted the camera to record what was about to happen." My blood ran cold. The girl in the blue dress wasn't just a ghost. She was a loop, a digital memory that had turned into something physical, something hungry. Suddenly, a sound erupted from the hallway outside. Crack. Squelch. Crack. It sounded like bones being snapped and rearranged. And then a voice. "Help on me, please." It was Marcus, but his voice was wrong. It was distorted, like a corrupted audio file, skipping and repeating the same pitch. "Helpan. Helpan. L." I looked through the small vent in the maintenance door. The hallway was lit by a strobe-like flickering. Primeras a W marca. He was standing in the middle of the corridor, but he wasn't standing on his own. His body was limp, his head hanging at an impossible angle. Behind him, the small girl in the blue dress was holding his hand. No, she wasn't holding it. Her small, pale hand was inside his wrist, her skin merging with his. She was using him like a puppet. Marcus's eyes were wide open, staring directly at the door I was hiding behind. Tears of blood were streaming down his face. He mouthed the words, "Run. She wants to be seen." The girl looked up. Her face, which had been blurry in the footage, was now clear. She had no eyes, only the black, hollow sockets that looked like camera lenses. She pointed her free hand at the maintenance door. "Yeah, I'm found you," she whispered. The voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from the mole's public announcement speakers, echoing through the entire building. The heavy metal door of the closet began to dent inward. Something was hitting it with the force of a sledgehammer. Boom and boom and boom. I realized then that there was no escape. The mall was a cage, and I was the final frame of her movie. The door didn't just break, it shattered. The wood splintered like toothpicks as the force from the other side ripped the hinges off the wall. I scrambled back, hitting the metal shelves, sending files and old tools crashing around me. Marcus, what was left of him, stepped into the room. His movements were jerky, like a film skipping frames. Behind him, the girl in the blue dress stood in the shadows, her hand still fused with his. "De camera." He's always watching. Marcus's voice crackled through the intercom speakers. I looked up at the corner of the closet. There, tucked behind a pipe, was an old, dusty security camera I hadn't noticed before. The red light wasn't just blinking. It was glowing, a steady, angry crimson. I realized the truth. In that final second, the mall wasn't haunted by a girl. It was the footage itself. The digital record of her death had become a living thing, an entity that needed fresh content to survive. Every guard who went missing, every glitch in the system, was just another scene being added to a never-ending reel. "Please," I sobbed. "I won't tell anyone. I'll delete the footage." The girl stepped forward, leaving Marcus's limp body to collapse like a wreck. She reached out her hand toward my face. Her fingers felt like cold glass. "Don't delete it," she whispered, her voice now coming from my own pocket. I pulled out my phone. The screen was on. The camera app was open, recording me. Make it viral. The world turned into a swirl of static. My vision fractured into pixels. I felt my body being pulled, stretched, and compressed, as if I were being sucked into a vacuum. The pain was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was the feeling of being turned into data. Bousy, long, silent. The next morning, the day shift manager arrived at the North End Mall. He found the security room empty. The coffee was still warm. Marcus and I were nowhere to be found. He sat down at the console and checked the logs. Everything was normal. No alarms, no broken doors, no signs of a struggle. But then he noticed a new file on the hard drive, a video file titled 314-AM_final.mp4. He clicked play. On this screen, he saw the North Corridor. It was empty. Then the service elevator doors opened. Two figures stepped out, wearing security uniforms. One was Marcus. The other was me. But we weren't walking. We were standing perfectly still, facing the camera. Our heads were tilted at that same unnatural, sharp angle. And standing between us, holding our hands, was a little girl in a pale blue dress. In the video, I raised a finger to my lips. Shoo! The manager froze. He felt a cold draft in the sealed room. He looked up at the air vent. He didn't run. He couldn't. He just watched the screen as, in the video, I started to walk toward the camera. Faster and faster, until my face filled the entire monitor. The screen went black, and then the manager heard a notification from his own phone. He pulled it out. Someone had just uploaded a new video to the mall's official server. It was a live stream, and the title was, "You are next."